Hey, this is Dr. Alison Bremner, and I'm here with Vern Reddy from Reddy Law. And today I want to talk to you about how a personal injury lawyer is super helpful if you've been in a car accident. Vern, hello.
Hi, thanks for inviting me. I appreciate it.
Very welcome. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your practice.
Okay, sure. So I am based in Denver, and I primarily focus on helping people who've been injured by someone else's wrongdoing, whether that's a car accident, a slip and fall, kind of take the whole range of personal injury cases. I've been practicing for a little over 10 years and went to law school in Boulder at CU.
Nice. Yeah, well, 10, we've both been 10 years. I hope we look younger than we both been practicing for 10 years. Awesome. Well, what do you think the most common mistake people make when they're in an injury? They have an injury, they have a car accident. I suppose, like, what do they either do or don't do that you think is like the worst mistake?
Okay, so there are a few, but apologizing is one. It's admitting fault essentially isn't good. But that aside, really the big one, the one that's really going to stand out and what could end up being a case killer is not getting treatment. Just not going and getting treatment. People tend to feel like, oh, that hurts, but their adrenaline's up. They're focused on other things. They're worried about other things, and I think everybody's job after being in a collision that results in any sort of injury is to just get it checked out. It doesn't hurt to do that and to start treatment right away. If you ever think you're going to need treatment, it's not 2 months after the accident that you should start that. It's definitely as soon as you possibly can. And the one indication that treatment is needed is pain.
Totally. And, I see this all the time, people who didn't get treatment, and it's like months or a year later. And unfortunately, like sometimes they miss their opportunity, right? Or they don't get as much compensation because they waited, and
Yeah,
then
and
they're
some,
in a ton of pain.
right. And some conditions, you don't necessarily always feel pain immediately. Again, adrenaline, distraction, whatever it is. You may not feel pain until the next day, but it's important not to let lots of time pass because then it's going to be much harder to connect that condition to the collision.
Yeah, absolutely. So what percentage do you think of people who reach out to you have not sought out treatment?
Actually, I would say it's pretty a low percentage, but it happens often enough that it is really frustrating when it does, because by the time they get to me, typically a little bit more time has passed, and again, it's going to be harder to connect that back to the collision at that point. It can be a case killer to wait months. It can, but I think those people who do develop symptoms a little bit later. It's just important to go get that treatment as soon as you do develop symptoms. And I bring that up as a major issue in these cases, not because 80% of people who come to me haven't treated, but because those who don't, it really does a lot of damage to your case.
Yeah, absolutely. So when should someone seek out a lawyer? I get this question all the time in the office because they're like, I was in a little fender bender. Like, should I get a lawyer? Or someone says, hey, I was in a really bad accident, but my MedPay is covering it. Should I get a lawyer? So that's, I think,
Yeah.
a common question I get.
I think, when can be interpreted two ways. Do I need a lawyer at all? And at what point? And so the question about do I need a lawyer at all, it really is answered with how committed are you to getting a fair outcome? If you're really pursuing a full and fair outcome, then you're probably going to need help. And that's not true in necessarily every area of the law. And I certainly understand and sympathize with people who are like, I don't want to sue. I don't want to go through that process if I don't have to. Isn't this something I could just resolve on my own? For some people it is, but it's because they're willing to take a lower offer. And it's probably less than they're entitled to, probably less than is fair, honestly. Because insurance companies kind of value their cases on what their loss would be if they went to trial, and they don't necessarily start from the position that this person who's unrepresented is going to take this to trial.
Yeah, and I think that sometimes what I say in the office is that people they think, oh, I don't need a ton of care. I just need, maybe a month of care, a couple appointments, and they don't realize what happens when soft tissue is damaged. And so I think they underestimate how much they need to get well. So this isn't a problem for life. And do you find people think that they're like, oh, I don't need very much?
Well, people don't know what they're going to need. And don't think for a second that at-fault insurance companies won't pounce on that and take advantage of it. It does benefit them to try to resolve the case immediately before an injured person has any idea what their actual medical costs are going to be and how much treatment they're going to need, or whether they're going to need future care. That never comes up, right? If you don't have a lawyer on the case. And, there are rules governing, you mentioned MedPay a few minutes ago. In Colorado, there are rules governing MedPay and how it can be compensated and whether the at-fault insurance company gets to get that advantage, or whether it's the person who actually paid the premiums and was responsible and had that MedPay coverage in the first place. At-fault insurance companies will take advantage of that if they can. And, people will go into those negotiations with the expectation that, well, that was covered by MedPay, so that's already resolved. Well, it was covered by MedPay because you paid premiums for MedPay, and that was a separate contract, right, of your own. And why would the at-fault insurance company be allowed to take advantage of that and benefit from it? They shouldn't be. But that's just one example of many.
Totally. Well, for those who are watching, maybe we're using sort of a term that we know in our industry. Let's explain what MedPay is. So a lot of people don't know this, but you have insurance on your car insurance to help for medical claims. So why don't you go ahead and explain that a little bit of what MedPay is, and in Colorado specifically how it works.
Yeah, so in Colorado, unless you have specifically waived it, it was sold to you as part of your initial auto insurance policy, and you're paying premiums on it. And MedPay pays out for medical care. Usually it's like a $5,000 policy, sometimes 10, sometimes more than that if you've asked for more than that. But the minimum is $5,000, again, unless you specifically waived it. So it pays out regardless of liability. Okay, so it doesn't matter who's at fault. If you were in an accident and you have that coverage, you're entitled to have that benefit pay out on your behalf, regardless of who was at fault for the accident. Okay, so MedPay is great in that sense that it typically does not result in any kind of fight over, who was responsible. And so people often don't even think of their own medical coverage or their own auto coverage because they're like, well, the other guy hit me, so it's up to their insurance to cover everything. You may be able to recover from both sides there, even if it was, not your fault.
Totally. Hey, Vern, check your speaker a little bit. You're going in and out. Do you see anything? Go ahead and talk again.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, we're good now. I don't know what happened there, but
sorry about that.
No, I can understand what you're saying. He's got a little bit quiet, but no big deal. But yeah, okay. So MedPay is great, but yes, it's not your only option. And I think people don't even know it exists. And it's great because you can choose any provider that you would like to see as long as they have the ability and capability. We do in our office, just so you know. And what I love is people can get care immediately, right? Because that's the thing, is they can get care immediately and then talk to a lawyer about the settlement. So they don't have to wait, for the settlement to come in, or the office doesn't have to wait. They can start care immediately and then kind of process what that's going to look like later. They need
Absolutely.
To get more stuff.
And it is kind of it's a relatively small amount of coverage compared to the total coverage available in most of these cases. But like you said, it does pay out immediately. So it pays as these bills are incurred in most cases. So it's a great advantage.
Yeah, awesome. Well, so why should you choose you, Freddie Law? What makes you so special?
Hey, I didn't say it. You did. But
I think you're special. I think you are. So let's talk about why they should call you.
Personalized care, or personalized representation and caring about the case, really. Okay, so I think those two together, what that means is most of the people that I represent, this is the first time they've ever been through any sort of process related to a lawsuit. Whether they end up filing a formal lawsuit or not, they usually don't want to be involved in this. Only I think this stuff is fun, right? They don't. So they didn't ask for this. They didn't do anything wrong. And they typically wonder why every choice they're making from the time of the accident to the time this case is resolved is put under a microscope. They're told, say this, don't say that, wear this, don't wear that, do this, don't do that, all the way through the process. From their perspective, people not knowing what's coming next or why, it's kind of like just going through the process blind, right? You don't know what's coming next. You're following commands for the most part as a client, and you're answering questions when you're asked. And that can feel, I guess every person in this situation who has to turn to a lawyer for help is a hurt human who feels kind of lost.
It's
so
scary.
you want a good relationship with whomever you're going to work with, you know, and I think it needs to be someone you feel like you can get along with well, someone who treats you like a human person and not a file.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I will say, like, our interactions have been awesome. We have, we used to have like beers once in a while and talk about like cases and talk about things.
And we will again.
We will again, yes. So I've always appreciated just how, the great education you have, right? So you're there for people and they can ask questions, and by no means is it like binding them to a contract. So I love that they can just, you're a resource. I find you much as a resource for these kind of things.
I hope so. And people are always welcome to call and reach out and ask questions and all of that. There's no obligation to do that. There's nothing, even if you retain an injury attorney, every injury attorney I know takes a percentage of the amount of money they recover for the injured client. And that's how they get paid. So one, it means if you have an attorney working your case, they believe in your case. And two, it means that people get access to justice regardless of their financial circumstance up front. So there's really not a whole lot to lose in getting help.
Awesome. So, and I know right now, since you're at your house right now and have basically moved your office in there. So what kind of things are you doing right now to help so that you can talk to people virtually?
Okay. So, even before we were all sent home, my approach was a bit different in that I spent a lot of time meeting people where they were, and I don't require people to come into my office anyway. I have an office and it's there for that purpose for people who are comfortable meeting there, and it can be a great place to meet. But on the other hand, I've always offered video conference as an initial consultation method. I've always been willing to talk to people on the phone, and my availability for that tends to be really good. And I have links on my website where people can go on and schedule themselves for that initial consultation without even having to talk to a call screener or a case manager or anything like that. So availability has always been a big deal, but now, circumstances have forced us all to get there. And I am obviously wanting people to not wait because delay can harm their case. It is better to get your case started and see what we can get done now, rather than put yourself at the back of a really long line when all of this is done.
Yeah, absolutely.
Preservation of evidence is important too, and that's something that can be done early in a case. Again, helping people making sure they're getting all the treatment they need, and talking to the insurance companies for them so they don't have to be the ones doing that. Those are all things that can make your case much better in the end. And so it's important to get it started now. No reason not to, because I'm available by phone and video chat. We can definitely get your case going and get a lot done without ever involving the courts at this point.
Awesome. So we're going to, after we get off this call, below in the comments, Vern's going to put down the link to, if you want to get a virtual consultation, just chat with them. I mean, really right now, people, you got a little extra time. There's no harm in reaching out and just getting a consultation, see what he has to say. Because I do think that there's going to be some backup in the court system. So getting your file in early, I think, is probably a really good thing to be able to get everything settled. So that's it. Unless you got something else you want to talk about, Vern, before we get on.
No, that's it for me. And thank you so much, Dr. Alison, for reaching out and making this available. I really appreciate it. Hopefully it'll be helpful to some people. And thanks so much for having me.
You're welcome. Thanks for coming on. And, again, the reason I'm doing these calls is because, one, I just want to provide information for you. And I also like to support local businesses. And I've known Vern for a while, and I love his practice, and I want to support him and support you guys to be able to get all the information and help that you need. And that's all I got for you.
Well, thanks so much.
You're very welcome, and see you guys later.